Hi everyone. Next video in the critical essays series, and this one is going to give us an overview of the next part of the essay, which is the main paragraph. So we've dealt with the introduction already. After that, you've got the main components of your essay, which is going to be a series of linked paragraphs. There should be 5 of these in most essays, although some people manage to do very, very good essays with just 4 paragraphs, but there's a balance to be struck there, obviously, between the length of the essay, the amount of evidence that you've got, and the time that you have available. So we'll be aiming for 5 as the kind of benchmark, but it is, as I say, possible to do 4. Those main paragraphs should all use basically the same structure. And again, I said in the last video that I taught that introductory template to students at all sorts of levels. The same is true of this. I've taught this basic structure to advanced higher students. It's the same structure that I used to use to teach S1s when I taught in high schools. And the reason for it's the same thing that I used when I was in university, and the reason for that is that it works. What you're basically doing here with each main paragraph is you're going to have the statement that introduces the point you're going to make. Some of you would know that as a topic sentence from high school. And again, I'll show you examples of each of these. I'm going to walk you through the whole thing. The evidence is then the quote you're lifting from the text, so the lines from the poem, the sentences from the short story, whatever it happens to be. Every single paragraph needs to have a sufficient amount of evidence in it, at least one main quotation in the middle. It's also possible to add more later on, but we'll get to that later in the year. The next thing that you have to do is analyse. I'd be looking for an absolute minimum of 2 points of analysis in each main paragraph. So 2 techniques, for example, that you can identify from the quotation above and then explain the effect. And then finally, you give a comment where you explain how all of the things you've just said, you explain how that evidence and that analysis is relevant to the essay question. So that's the point at which you actually kind of keep everything connected all the way through the essay, keep it relevant. It's one of the bits that really matters for the marking as well, to show that you understand that the analysis that you're doing has to be in the context of the task that you've been set. So an example of what a full main paragraph would look like is like this kind of thing here. I know a little bit's cut off at the bottom there, but I've got a second screen beside me so I can read that little bit out to you. But you'll get the point anyway. So up at the start there, you see it starts with early on in the poem. So statements should have those little linking phrases in them where possible. Later on in the text, after this, those kind of things. Again, we'll get into that in the video on statements. But what you can see there is what it should look like as well, kind of visual of what it should look like. It's about the sort of length I would expect towards the end of the higher course. But at National 5, you can write essays that look much like higher essays. The structure is all the same as well. For those of you doing communication literature in the SWAP and Access courses, I'd be looking for much the same. There'll be different levels of sophistication to the analysis and to the comments, but in principle, this is what I'm looking for. And as I say, this is what I've had before from advanced higher students and from 12-year-old kids in S1 classes. Everybody can do this and can write like that. It's just a case of following the structure. So in order to get good at writing critical essays, what you have to basically do is break it down into individual tasks. That's the reason I'm good at it. So you have to think about it in terms of making sure there's always the introduction with the key parts. In the main paragraphs, does each main paragraph have the 4 things: the statement, the evidence, the analysis, the comment? Now obviously I'm not going to read that whole thing out to you because it's a video and you can just pause it and read it for yourself. The wee last bottom bit there actually says, this comparison allows us to begin to appreciate the fundamental conflict that the photographer must confront each time he develops his photos and introduces us to the price he pays to continue with his sacred work. If you look at that in the context of an essay, the sort of essay question that was in the introduction video, for example, then you can start to see how you'd be using that comment to just keep referring back to the essay question. Early on, that last sentence is sometimes really just a rehash of the essay question wording, but the more you go, the more sophisticated it becomes, and eventually you'll all be writing paragraphs that look a lot like this. So I'll leave it there for this one. That's just to give you an example of what the main paragraphs are like. The next few videos will actually take you through in detail how to or a bit more detail certainly, how to construct those statements, what the analysis should do, how the comments work. Usual thing just now. Any questions, any problems, any concerns, just get in touch. Cheers.